A very good morning to you. Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Wednesday morning. I'm doing a morning show because obviously I'm going to be at the Carabao Cup game on Wednesday evening. And I'll be bringing you a post match review of the game. So look out for that later on this evening. But I thought I'd do a quick update for you with regards to transfers and the latest stories and the latest rumours and the latest nonsense. Now, if you're new to the channel, please forgive me if you've heard this before, but if you're new to the channel, please do hit the like button. Please do become a subscriber of the channel if you like the content. There are subscription digits and there's some like buttons and all that down there. So please do click on those and become a subscriber. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, when I read some transfer stories, I do have to ask myself, who makes this stuff up? More often than not, it's the player's agent who wants to get his client a new deal, or it's the sporting director or someone equivalent at a club who wants to move a player on. And then, when you're made fully aware of the linked club's situation, you just know that you put two and two together and come up with five. Now, what am I talking about? Well, here's the deal, or no deals, as the case may be. Um, the first thing is about the agent touting his client. In this case, it's Alex Oxlade-Chamberlin, the now 31-year-old attacking midfielder who left Liverpool last summer on a free transfer and has ended up at Turkish club Besiktas, I can never pronounce it, Besiktas, on a 3-year deal, earning around 65, 70,000 pounds a week. Now, he's a player who, throughout his career, both at Arsenal and at Liverpool, has had a string of injuries, including knee, cruciate ligament tears, and again, more recently at the Turkish club, he missed 18 games because of a recurring knee injury. Now, and then we move on to the sporting director. So, who's a sporting director or someone of similar ilk at a club trying to get rid of? And it is Tammy Abraham. Um, Now, Roma are desperately trying to offload this 26-year-old who joined the Italian club bucket back in 2021, signed a 5-year deal, and who earns something like £92,000 a week. Now, a player who, since arriving at Roma, has had a number of small injuries, nothing major, but of course, which only sort of made him miss around 9 games so far. But then, of course, last year, he had a cruciate ligament injury, which he almost missed the whole season for. He missed 40 games. Now, Abraham is back, but since his return, he's become almost like a bit part player for Roma, and they've gone into the transfer market and they've strengthened. And then the football club is, of course, our very own West Ham United, who are linked to both these players through social media. But are we? We've had our own fair share of injury-prone players in the past. We've got a history of players with injuries: Andy Carroll, Jack Wilshere, and of course, more recently, Kurt Zouma. So with Tim Steidten now at the helm, our days of buying players with such terrible injuries are over, aren't they? And more to the point, we're a club who has clearly said that we need to sell players and lower our wage bill before we consider bringing any other players in. But if we're going to consider bringing any other players in, are we going to really go ahead and start buying players who are injury prone? Now, when you look at the likes of James Ward-Prowse, who might be sold by default because we can't get rid of some of the injury-prone players that we already have, like Kurt Zouma, like Maxwell Cornet, etc. You know, Ward-Prowse, throughout his whole career, has had one major injury, which was back in 2014, 10 years ago, and that was a broken foot. And other than that, he's had the odd day off here and there with very minor niggles. So why would we sell James Ward-Prowse in order to bring in somebody like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlin? It truly doesn't make sense when I see these kinds of stories being touted around. And I've got to be honest, you sort of read them and you're trying to make sense of them, and they do is they end up winding you up more than anything else. So, in other words, I don't think there's any truth. In fact, there is. I'm going to go out on a limb. Not that I don't think there is. I believe there is no truth whatsoever that we're looking to sign Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain um, uh, in regards to allowing James Ward-Prowse to leave. And as the senior source keeps reiterating numerous times, he continues to deny that we have any interest in Tammy Abraham whatsoever. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but I can guarantee you we're not getting Oxlade-Chamberlin, and it looks as if Tammy Abraham is off the cards as well. So, what about some other nonsense transfer rumours? Well, now that El Mashin is back and fit, the transfer rumours have resurfaced that he will be targeted by other clubs, namely Man United. But why would he leave after the investment that we've made in the squad this summer? And he's had interviews and he's alluded to the fact that he's looking forward to being part of, doing something with West Ham this season, getting us back into Europe and so on and so forth. And it doesn't help, I guess, when so-called ITKs like Fabrizio Romano, um, in a way, with some of the things that they put out, it feels like it stirs things up a little bit, suggesting that other clubs know that we've overspent and are looking to move players on, and that we might be subject to bids being made to take advantage of our overspending. Yes, we do want bids to be made, but only for the players that we want to move on, not for critical players like Alvarez, who's clearly an integral part of Lopetegui's plans. So surely money talks. Yeah, it does. But I don't think anything is going to happen with Alvarez this coming summer. Now, I think if we don't succeed in getting into Europe next summer, then we will quite likely see a big player or two moving on. But it ain't going to happen this summer. So all this mischief making in the transfer market isn't going to convince anyone that a player like Alvarez is set to leave in the final days of the summer transfer window, when it will be evident that we won't have enough time to find a like for like replacement for him. So I don't believe that story either. But one player that is set to leave one way or another is Kurt Zouma, who arrived in the Jawf region of Saudi on Monday to undertake his medical at newly promoted Saudi Pro League side, Al Oroba. Now, as it stands, it's Wednesday morning whilst you're watching this show, and it's been established that he would actually have his medical later sometime today on Wednesday. Now, the story goes on to say that if Zuma passes his medical, this is confusing me a little bit, so bear with me, I'm going to try and explain it. If Zuma passes his medical, then he will be signed for a season-long loan, okay, with an obligation to buy next summer. Now, this still may have been arranged with the player's agent, because as far as West Ham United are concerned, it doesn't matter what happens to Kurt Zouma next summer, because his contract ends next summer. So whether there's an obligation from the Saudi side to sign him permanently or not is probably got nothing to do with West Ham United, but more to do with his agent. If he passes his medical, I guess what his agent's going to want is to give Kurt Zouma at least a 2-year deal or something like that. So I get it from that perspective, but it makes no odds, with the greatest of respect to West Ham United, because he'll be at the end of his contract anyway. Now, what's important for West Ham is that if Zuma does pass his medical, then it will take some, but not all, of the player's salary off this season's wage bill. Why not all? Well, in order for the deal to go through, West Ham have agreed to subsidise part of Kurt Zuma's £100,000 a week wages. But at this stage, it's unknown as to how much. I'm going to hazard a guess, maybe 50%. Now, it all makes sense now when we're hearing about when the club are saying that we need to move 2 players on in order to free up sufficient funds to accommodate the signing of Carlos Soler. Now it begins to make sense because if we're going to subsidize part of Kurt Zuma's salary throughout this season, that's on the books. And so we're going to need to let another player go in order to free up more wages, in order to be able to afford to bring Carlos Soler in. Now, that's the wages done, but that still doesn't cover the issue of the fact that we're going to pay a fee for Carlos Soler. Now, there's talk about that we will sign him on a loan to buy with an obligation to buy deal. But if we're still linked to a striker, which I'll come to in a moment, there might be two. We've already got one player on loan. We can only have two at the club at any one time. So if it's Soler, that means we're not looking to buy a striker, or certainly not a loan with an obligation to buy. So if we're offering to subsidize, and another story came out as well about Zuma, is that apparently when we were signing Jean-Claire Todibo to West Ham United, apparently we offered them Zuma in return as a sort of a swap, some kind of swap deal. But the French club turned that offer down because they couldn't afford his wages. Now, if we're subsidizing Zuma's wages at the Saudi club, then why wouldn't we have done it with the French club? I think there's more to it than just the wages there, don't you? Um, Now, what else? Other stories that are knocking around over the last 24 hours is that another one we could probably take with a pinch of salt is that we are again interested in Arsenal's winger Reiss Nelson. Now, whilst this rumor was prominent early on in the transfer window, the fact that we've now signed Luis Guilherme and Crescencio Somerville to complement Bowen and Kudus out wide, and the fact that the senior sources said some time back that we've got enough wingers. It's a surprise that this story has resurfaced. I guess it's coming to the end of the transfer window, and clubs are looking to offload players. I dare say Reiss Nelson is a good player, 24-year-old winger. He broke through the ranks at Arsenal. Last season, however, he made 24 appearances in all competitions, of which 5 were in the starting lineup. He's on 100 grand a week. And I would say that there's little or no chance of West Ham signing him. We've got enough wingers, unless we're going to convert one of our players as a striker, Bowen or Kudus or whatever. I can't see this happening. Now, I mentioned on Monday night in the West Ham Weekly Show that we were also interested in Nketiah. But apparently, it's all been agreed that he's on his way to Crystal Palace. Now, what about our strikers? Well, apparently, there's no chance that we're going to sign Ivan Toney because Chelsea have entered the fray. So let's see if that gets over the line by Friday or not. And in other news, it's not just Toney that they're looking at, but other stories are saying that they're in for John Duran of Aston Villa. Now, if it is Duran, do we have a chance of signing Toney perhaps? And one good reason is that one thing I was reminded of in the West Ham Weekly Show on Monday night was that if, let's say, for argument's sake, we actually do move both James Ward-Prowse and Danny Ings on, they are 2 of our homegrown players, which means we will be down to 7 homegrown players in total in the senior squad, which means that we're going to have to go out and look for a homegrown player, which is why I keep coming back to Ivan Toney. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's possible in order to make up the numbers, the homegrown numbers, it's possible that if we do move James Ward-Prowse on, plus another homegrown player like Danny Ings, then maybe, just maybe, a player like Toney might be on our radar. Thank you all for watching. Do enjoy the game against Bournemouth. I'll be there. I'm actually taking the other half. I don't know why, but there you go. She's not into football, but there you are. So I'll be doing a post-match review of the game. So do look out for that. Enjoy the game, and I'll see you all very soon.